When I left religion and fundamentalist churches, I realized that churches in Christianity don't believe in scientific methods or in evolution. So, the history of science is the story of how religion and secular ideas come together. And if you were listening to the last episode that I published, it was about how religion always impacts progress in every branch of society, extremely frequently and consistently when it comes to medicine and science. Religion doesn't have as much of a hold as it used to, but it really does have a tremendous hold even in the 21st century. I wasn't taught or even conceptualized the idea that evolution was right and scientifically plausible. I never learned about it because in the fundamentalist Christian churches I had gone to, they didn't teach it to me. They didn't teach me anything that didn't line up with the Bible. Every history class, every anatomy class was centered around biblical ideology. So you can imagine what kind of sex ed class and medicine classes I had. I didn't learn about birth control, contraceptives, how to stay safe, consent, anatomy. I didn't learn about the extreme differences between genders, or I never even learned that there's more than two genders. And I think a lot of people can say the same thing, having grown up in the 2000s, if that's the generation you grew up in. The older you are, the much more likely you grew up in a time and place that didn't teach or didn't even understand, acknowledge, or talk about different orientations. And when your curriculum centers around biblical doctrine, what if that biblical doctrine doesn't believe or agree with certain medical procedures of healthcare, like abortion, autonomy? And there are stark differences between how secular people believe and how biblical people believe. You may not believe it, but if you've grown up in fundamentalism like I have, you definitely see a consistency when it comes to only enjoying and experiencing science if it backs up and supports your religious beliefs. That's one reason why I don't like religion. It puts a stopper in curiosity, critical thinking. How much further as a society could we have gone if the scientists of our day, before 1850, didn't believe in a divine power? Not all churches are closed-minded or stop people's curiosity with thought-terminating cliches and terms. But when you're in the biggest denominations of Christianity, the fundamentalists, the Baptists, you definitely see how they discourage people from getting upper secondary education. Up until recently, that was a big Jehovah's Witness thing, where they did not want people and did not encourage people to get secondary education unless it was for theology or for some kind of biblical degree. And my family is extremely Christian. I mean, we have a religious professor at a religious college. I have a pastor in my family going toward, I think he just finished his master's, might be going toward getting a PhD. My father may not have any degrees in biblical history or in theology, but he was an adult Christian teacher for decades in churches, and he served with elders in churches. But he was definitely in, if not junior, maybe senior leadership positions. And religion does make people less likely to use critical thinking. And I don't think that die-hard religious believing people, I don't think secular evolution can exist in the same vacuum as religion. Because your religion basically does not agree or tolerate any scientific research that does not agree with your religion, even if there's scientific evidence to disprove what you don't believe in. So I wasn't taught about secular science. I have huge gaps. I didn't learn evolution until my 20s. And there's something about the insidious nature of having to have all the answers and never wondering if those answers are valid, accurate, or provable. And it's definitely an issue. When you were taught your entire life to only see the world in a very rose-colored glasses, very us versus them mentality, it's terrifying to study and learn things that don't agree with your point of view. Which is why kids are homeschooled or sent to Christian schools or Christian colleges, because people in authority do not want regular members, especially men, to have any exposure to anything that is not their version of Christianity. It's very difficult to reject what's been pounded into you as a kid. And it's terrifying to go from being a fundamentalist Christian with all the answers and going into what we call agnosticism and atheism, where I don't have all the answers, and I'm okay with that. I'd rather not have all the answers and know that is safer than believing anything just to have answers. Now, not all churches persuade people to ignore scientific method, clinical research, and critical thinking. But in the very high control fundamentalist churches, you are not you're not told to go get an education outside of things that agree with your religion. You're not pushed to do things outside of your beliefs. Marrying another Christian from another denomination is greatly frowned upon. And when you live in an environment, either at home or at church, where there's only one type of true Christian, and if you don't know which one that is, or you believe that no other denomination in Christianity is correct and accurate, it's extremely isolating. And evolution is not something that's highly regarded by Christians. Even IVF, birth control, every form of scientific breakthrough, there is so much resistance from Christians. Right-wing groups, they don't want anyone to read anything that doesn't hide the fact of real life, especially when it's geared toward people under 18. And it's like an aversion to secular things. Just because something doesn't agree with your version of the way you see the world doesn't make it the enemy. And it's not trying to take your kids. It's not trying to indoctrinate your kids. Even though, at the end of the day, indoctrination is how these religions stay afloat, stay relevant. It's only indoctrination if it's the wrong doctrine that you're shoving down their throat. And teaching someone evolution is not the same thing as supporting it, believing in it, or anything really. Even though evolution sounds a little bit more credible than an invisible person we've never seen creating everything. And religion, Christianity, has always kept progress from happening, or it greatly extended the process required to have progress. And when religion only likes science when it agrees with them, and ignore it, bury it, and villainize it when it doesn't line up with their beliefs, you have a problem. And it's a very serious problem. Science is not the enemy. And any belief or way of life that keeps you from being curious and doesn't want you to pursue education outside of your belief system is probably a cult. Science had to push through a lot of religious rules and defense. This is why I believe science and religion should be separate things. Just like politics and religion. If you believe that the world is one way and never will you ever conceive of it as another way, it's hard to be scientifically objective. If you believe God created the world, it's hard to be objective when the world doesn't prove that God created the world. There's no evidence of a divine creator existing or doing anything. I like being around people that are objective. They may have beliefs, they may have a lack of religious beliefs, but it doesn't keep them from pursuing knowledge and scientific research. And when most statistics that Christians talk about are not even scientifically or current accurate. I fact-checked most of the things I was taught as scientific evidence and proof as a child. I found out that their stats were over 50 years old. And their beliefs and what they put in their books is so out of date. The people who did those statistics back in the 60s and 70s were called out for improper scientific methods. I'm glad I left an institution that denies that there are other opportunities of how the world started and how it's progressed. And anything that holds back positive, life-changing progress is a hindrance, not a blessing. And every scientific discovery before 1900 that we now take for granted, those people risked their lives to publish and to teach scientific fact. Religion and Christianity has always tried to squelch scientific research. Right now, MAGA Christians are trying to remove research into child cancer and AIDS research, vaccines, and food safety. I don't care what your beliefs are about things like IVF and abortion. Everyone has the right to good health care. Everyone has a right to drink water without fear of radioactivity. And when you elect idiots into places of power who take away safeguards for health and progress, a lot of people will die or be misinformed. Religion has no place in science. And trust me, religious people don't want science in their religion, because science disproves a lot of the crap that I was taught as a fundamentalist Christian. We don't need a God to be moral people. And if God created this world, which he didn't, but if he did, he has a lot of explaining to do. Because whatever this is, I would not be proud of. Chaos is what it is. And religion has always used chaos to push an agenda or solidify a power struggle. They don't say chaos is a ladder for nothing. Religion has always kept certain countries morally and scientifically bankrupt. And America is one of the least progressive countries when it comes to medical and insurance. We have almost 500,000 people in medical bankruptcy, while places in Europe that are extremely agnostic and atheist, they don't have medical bankruptcy. It isn't a thing. But something about America, it's better for everyone to bill you to keep you barely alive than it is to cure you, because America is one of the few places where it's legal to profit off someone's ill health. But if you want quality health care, it doesn't exist in America. And when our leaders do everything they can to rip away safeguards and FDA laws, they discontinue research, federally and state funded, to cure cancers and learn about issues that we may resolve someday. We are morally bankrupt. And it's not because there isn't enough God in everything. It's because we lack compassion and empathy. And when the average Christian these days views empathy and compassion as a sin, you know exactly what kind of people these groups are.